Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.
Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with Carl Forehand, and we are working through your latest book, Campfires in the Desert, a deconstruction travel guide. And so before we start into the next chapter, which I believe is chapter 8, anything you want to let us know?
The chapters don't have numbers on them. I took them off at the last minute, probably.
That's all right.
But it's chapter 8, and the way we kind of laid this out, it's episode 400 and something. We don't even know that, right?
Right.
But we do know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
right?
we are. We're going to talk about learning to trust yourself. So, and yeah, this is definitely something that needs to be highlighted because I think that, you know, we are conditioned to not trust ourselves based on, yes, but I will say in organized religion, you know, because of some of the scripture verses that we hear from the pulpit. Yeah, so I'm going to dive right in, and I kind of highlighted something that you put in the very first paragraph of this chapter. And you say, we often think leaders possess a special ability that distinguishes them from others, leading us to defer to and submit to them. In these organizations, both actual and perceived hierarchical, that's a big word for me, structures rely on a certain level of shame to maintain control and functionality. And so I guess that's kind of what I was alluding to, you know, in organized religion, a lot of times because of what we hear, we learn to not trust ourselves rather than trust ourselves. So I was wondering, can you give some examples? Like a lot of times we throw around big, you know, 2-cent words, or they start out as really good words that describe things, but we use them so much that maybe their meaning gets kind of lost. So when you say a certain level of shame to maintain control and functionality, what are some examples of shame that you're talking about?
So guilt is I did something wrong. I'm sorry for it. Whatever, make amends. Shame is I am wrong.
Right.
And very much of religion points to that often because of the basic assumption of a lot of religions is that you're not any good. You're born bad. You're evil. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But there's the doctrine there of you're no good, and to make up for that, you need to come here once a week at least and hear someone who is in a power differential from you tell you how bad you are.
Yeah.
We used to sing a song. We didn't sing it much at our last church, but that was when it was popular. It was there is nothing good in me. That's a really, really, really strong statement.
Yeah.
That's meant to shame us, because then if I feel like I'm no good, then I need your solution, whatever it is today, whatever your new solution or your newfound wisdom from that we're getting from the same place we get our stuff, right? But
right.
This, in short, this messed up person is making up for his or her dysfunction and pointing that at the congregation. And I know your pastor is loving and good and charming and beautiful and all those things, but it happens in that situation to where we eventually get shamed. And when we feel shame, then we want some solution. We want to submit and help and try to get some healing from them, but it mainly just maintains control. If we're constantly in a state of brokenness, which is even heralded by some religions, they want you to be broken.
Right. It's
Uh,
almost like a badge of honor.
yeah, and it's a little bit like, military breaking you down before they can build you up. The trouble is you get that every week. You get a constant dose of, and the more fear, the more um, scariness they can put into it, the worse we feel about ourselves, and the more we want to submit
Mm-hmm.
and volunteer and help and
Mm-hmm.
all those things.
Yeah, so you said something that was kind of curious just then. So it made me think of the word like deflect, right? Or project.
Hmm.
So would you say, because you were a pastor for 20 years, so I'm gonna kind of like,
Yes.
I love the little flame that you have above each ti title in the a chapter title, because I kind of feel like I'm gonna kind of hold you to the flame right here and just say, so would you say that that was like looking back? Because obviously, I don't think most pastors, when you're up on that stage and you're preaching, that you're thinking to yourself, well, I feel like shit. So because I feel like shit, I'm going to make my congregation feel like shit.
Yeah.
But would you say, looking back, that that was part of it? Were you like feeling the weight of shame, perhaps? I'm putting words in your mouth. You can clean it up, of shame, and therefore projecting that or deflecting that onto the congregation?
Yeah, I thought about that word when we were reading through this ahead of time. We always kind of go back and read and listen to it before we talk about it again because it may have been several weeks, several months
Yeah.
ago or years ago when I wrote this. But projection is definitely something that happens all the time from the pulpit. It's I'm the strongest about things that are bothering me. And I may
Mhm.
admit that sometimes just to be vulnerable and so on.
Mhm.
But a lot of times it's my issue that hadn't been resolved that I'm projecting onto you. And I will be the authority and I will tell you what you should fix. And yeah, there is a lot of projection.
Mm.
We back in our early ministry, there was an evangelist that came around and he was real highly recommended. And he was very hard on things like homosexuality and so on,
Mhm.
not watching TV and all that. And when things came to light, he had a TV stuffed in his closet, kind of hidden away. He was not not just gay, but he was a predator.
Yeah.
And he was preying on his music guy.
Mhm.
And so um, there certainly is. A pastor is just a person.
Right.
Um, they may be have a calling to help those less fortunate, but sometimes they don't know how,
Mhm.
and they got as many problems as you do, maybe more, because of the environment they live in, and a lot of what that angst from the stage is um, projection,
Yeah.
just like you said,
Mhm.
and it's I'm frustrated with my life, so I'm going to take that out on you. And oddly enough, it works because, like you said before, it shames people
Mhm.
and creates a crisis for them. And then
Mhm.
when we resolve it, we treat it like it's a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we all got to feeling bad, and then now we're better because we regulated. We just simply regulated. We held
Mhm.
hands or we put our arm around somebody, we prayed with somebody, and it regulated us.
Mhm.
And so now that's like a breakthrough. Does
Mhm.
that make sense at
Yeah, it
all?
does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, so then you dive in with the leadership myth. Now, I have to say that I did not underline or have any questions here, but I want you to talk about what you mean by the leadership myth.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really, to me, what it boils down to in organized religion, and mine is American Christianity, Western Christianity. That's what I know about the most.
Mhm.
But I see us putting people in high levels of. Um, if you notice, almost everybody in leadership is pretty. They're charming. They're well spoken. They're not afraid of speaking in front of crowds. But does that make them a good leader?
Mm.
You know, um, I said we all often view leaders as nearly supernatural beings with exceptional qualities that seem to justify their high salaries for managing our organizations.
Mhm.
Some leaders may indeed possess natural talent that draws us in, but more often than not, they're determined individuals willing to take risk. And in reality, many, especially men, seek control and tend to follow a strong leader to gain some of the leader's influence.
Mm-hmm.
You see that in politics right now and in big churches and
Mm-hmm.
religion and so on, is that everybody's drawing up to that power differential and saying, I want some of that, I want a
Mm-hmm.
piece of that. And that's to me, that's not really leading.
Yeah.
A leader would say, this is, I'm a beggar trying to show you how to get a piece of bread.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and very few can do that authentically. And because it's just not entertaining and it doesn't scare you enough and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. Um, so there's a myth of leadership, and I find it in the biggest churches in politics and all those things. Those leaders tend to be like narcissistic toddlers.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to do what's best for them, and their own interests come first, or their organization, or their mission, or their group, or whatever. And um, leadership, basic leadership is a learned skill,
Mm-hmm.
that you can learn and you can practice. Um, but I kind of made the point that those employees sometimes are the smarter people.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that are doing the work and know how to do the work
Mm-hmm.
and so on. And so be it. If the leader, if that person does have some leadership skills, then we need them, right? We need somebody to make the tough calls,
Yeah.
when people disagree or
Mm-hmm.
make a decision, set a policy. We do need leadership, but not in the form of berating us every week so that
Mm-hmm.
it seems like we got a breakthrough when really it's just them telling us something we weren't aware of and now we should be afraid of it and here's what you do about it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what I was getting at.
Do you think in leadership, like, so what are in your opinion, what are some of the qualities of an effective leader? I won't even say a good leader, like, but an effective leader. So, like, as you were talking, I'm just thinking, there's got to be, in my opinion, like a level of, and I cannot think of the word. I've been sitting here trying to think of the word while you're explaining it, but just a level of, I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, I think that I would say the best leaders, well, basically a leader has to be able to make a decision. They have to put their self on the line, and make a decision and live with the consequences of that decision. That's the way they're leading. That's the way they're standing in front of their group. But the best leaders would stand up for their people.
Mm-hmm.
They would also listen to the people that have the insight
Mm-hmm.
in their group. They
Mm-hmm.
would listen and understand and learn from their people, and then do what those people can't for
Mm-hmm.
them, advocate for them, basically, and be their allies, in whatever they're struggling with. But it just so easily becomes, once the leader is popular, it becomes about the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've totally, the narrative's totally off.
Yeah.
It's not about how popular and cool and pretty our leader is and how he makes us laugh and he, you know, that's just entertainment. It's
Mm-hmm.
not leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think good leadership sacrifices for the people they
Mm-hmm.
lead. They take some bullets for you. They have clear instructions.
Mm-hmm.
We go on and on about leadership, but just like the women told us, what they want most from their leaders, for their leaders to listen to
Mm-hmm.
survivor stories and hear what the normal
Yeah.
people are saying. How are the normal people struggling,
Yeah.
which you don't have to do because you've insulated yourself from it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's the other thing, is don't hide yourself away and insulate yourself from all the issues that your
Mm-hmm.
congregation or your employees or your uh, followers face. Don't
Mm-hmm.
insulate yourself from that because of your privilege. Um, Listen to them. Get down and get involved in the work. It's real frustrating when a pastor shows up the last 5 minutes of the project that took all day and
Mm-hmm.
everybody sweated and worked hard and they show up for the pictures at the
Right.
end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we could go on and on about that, right?
But a leader is willing to, you know, kind of get in the trenches when you have to,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
To to feel with people that they're leading.
yeah.
Yeah.
And concerns that your employees or followers or parishioners have, it's not an intrusion on your day. It's not because they're trying to make your life more difficult. It's because there's an issue
Hmm.
and there's something you should be concerned with, and they're just bringing it to your attention.
Hmm.
It'd be better to listen to them, listen to their stories, listen to their painful things, um, and respond. Right?
Hmm. And then also, I don't know, we talk a lot about trauma. So, you know, when people come to you with what you feel it are like insignificant issues, the color of the carpet or whatever. I mean, but stay curious about, maybe they've never felt like they've ever been heard. And so that's why they come to you for with every little, you know,
Yeah, why is that important?
right,
It would be a better question to ask. They
right.
stop bothering me with your questions, and we don't have time for that. And
Yeah, why
you
is this important to you? And like
Mark
really,
Driscoll's the kind of chief example of that. There's bodies under the
mm,
bus, and there's going to be more bodies under the bus if you get on the bus, or you're
are
going
you
to
gonna get
be,
run over?
And unfortunately, that's the tone a lot of
Mhm.
organizations take, whether it's religious or otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, no. I mean, I feel like um to be an effective leader, you have to lead with empathy and compassion, and you have to be willing to, you know, like sometimes I just struggle because like if I have a leader that is expecting me to deal with a student or parents, but they're not willing to deal with that student or parent for whatever reason,
Hmm.
that's when I sometimes struggle with leadership. Like it can't just all be, rainbow and sunshine. Sometimes a leader has to get into the trenches. And like you said, sometimes, metaphorically take a bullet um, for the people that they're leading. So,
Absolutely.
and then next you have a section called the Doctrine of Depravity. And I'm going to read, I don't know how much, maybe the first paragraph, but it says, for most Protestant Christians, I think I don't really need to explain this common belief. It encourages people to embrace their religious system because we are perceived as incapable of connecting with God due to our sinful nature. It depicts an immoral person who lacks the inherent ability to relate to God, since the one who created these flawed beings is perfect. So, like the first question that came to my mind when I read that was, where did this idea come from? Where did this, we are incapable of connecting with God come from? It's probably way back in biblical days, I'm
Yeah, so
guessing, but
there's a few Bible verses that you could probably pull out and use for that. There's none righteous, no, not one. All our righteous acts are filthy rags from
mm,
Isaiah, I think. And you know, Paul said, "The good I try to do, I don't do," and so on. And so you can piece together a few of those and make a doctrine out of it. But um, it's just this flawed idea that um, we the narrative is there's a perfect creator that you know um, decides to create humans, create someone in his image
mhm,
that's like him uh, in whatever ways or some ways, but yet this being is not only not perfect, it's completely flawed. It's total depravity is
mhm,
what one of the tulips say in Calvinism,
mm.
that we're totally and completely depraved. And to people, I see you must not have met your grandchildren
Yeah.
if you think that, because when they're born, it's undeniable. This is something precious and good, and you know, when we traumatize it later, it's going to go down a different path. But that doctrine of initial depravity to me is it's a big contradiction. It doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Um,
you mentioned in here, when I first met our first granddaughter, and how, like, you say she gazed into the eyes of our daughter's baby. She saw nothing but goodness, purity, and love. I remember that too, like
Hmm.
after we brought JD home from the hospital. I remember, like, he came in and I was just like standing
He's
over his
precious.
crib and I was just like, he's just an angel.
Yeah.
People are always like, when did you first start deconstructing? I really feel like that was the beginning of, I just could not look at him and go, you are sinful. You are a sinful being. Like, he has done nothing but be born. So to think that, a baby could be depraved, you know, it's
Yes.
just so odd to me. It's crazy
So
thinking.
if I was a real good Bible scholar, I could probably tell you exactly where that came, maybe from Augustine or something. Augustine, by the way, was messed up and
Well, we're all
he was
messed up.
weird, and but he kind of instituted a lot of these kind of weird beliefs that were totally depraved, and it's unfortunate. The chapter of this title is called "Learn to Trust Yourself." And one of the first things we say is, well, you start out totally depraved, and then um, we um, not only totally depraved, but you can't trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's, can't trust what's inside of you. It's all sin, and you're sinful and you're depraved and you're not worthy. From the preaching, like you mentioned earlier, you're getting shame every week
Mm-hmm.
of, well, you're messed up and you need to get right with God and you need to get right and you're not right, right?
Yeah.
That's the other side of that, right? You're not
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe you're not right, I'm going to berate you for a while about that
Mm-hmm.
and talk loud and yell at you and
Mm-hmm.
stomp up and down, and however your pastor does that. But not all pastors do that, I understand. But that all that works together to just create an image in us. We can't trust ourselves, and whatever I'm feeling or thinking, or if I have a strong intuition,
Mm-hmm.
it must not be right. That's just you ate bad pizza, or it's the devil, or whatever. You can't trust that. You can only trust me. Even though we watch our pastors fail and misstate things and say things wrong, and we have a sense that their life is kind of messed up too,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they've got to, in this power differential, kind of keep us in our place.
Yeah.
Just like sometimes bad bosses do that as well.
Mm.
They'll kind of keep you in your place and keep you shamed a little bit so that you fight a little harder to make them happy.
Right.
And
I just feel
if
like it.
that's what we want to transpose onto God, that God is that way, then I got to the point where I don't need a God like that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need somebody to berate me and feel bad about myself. I already do that enough myself.
But
And
why do we do that?
yeah,
Is it a learned behavior? I mean,
I
is
think
that
it
just
is.
something
Yeah.
that I don't think we just naturally start, hating ourselves and berating ourselves and thinking we're like worthless piece of crap. I think that's messaging. I absolutely think that is messaging. And when you're talking about, like, taking your baby, to church and Sunday school at a very, very young age, and those are the subliminal messages that are being taught. They may be more in a sing-songy voice when they're 3 and 4 years old, but you hear that message over and over and over again. I do not think that we are born thinking, I am a wretch, I am horrible, I'm lower than dirt, I'm a worm. I don't think that we are born thinking that.
Right.
I think that is purposeful messaging
It's
from
a trauma.
really the
Yeah.
church. And the funny thing is, and you mentioned this, and you mention it in this chapter, is that it's such a contradiction. If we were created by a perfect God, and I guess, my brain is already like going three different directions, but we were created by a perfect God to be in his image. There's just so many contradictions to that. Like, you could go, well, Adam and Eve sinned, and I'm like, but why would they, like, if they were perfect,
Hmm.
why? Like how in the world could they be tempted if they were perfect?
Yeah.
It just starts collapsing on itself and doesn't really make any sense. And those same messages, those contradicting messages are actually can be in the very same sermon. Like
Hmm.
you were created in the image of God,
Loved by
you are
God,
loved, but you better straighten up.
but he also thinks you're a piece of
Yeah,
shit,
exactly.
and he's going to punish you
Uh-huh.
forever,
Uh-huh.
even if you just stole a piece of gum and that's all you ever did wrong. Um, it's also out of whack.
It is
It's
so out
like
of
a
whack.
dysfunctional parent
Yeah.
creating trauma in our life and then
Mhm.
blaming us for the trauma.
Exactly.
You know, uh,
Yep.
and pastors, unfortunately, do the same thing,
Hmm.
and it has to do with um, once they gain power, they don't want to give up power. It's amazing what we'll do sometimes.
But I think that's the reason why I struggle. Like there are some people that we have um interviewed on the podcast, and there are other people in podcasts that I've listened to, and they're like, they have been through hell. They've been through some really traumatic stuff. And they're like, but I still have faith in God. And it's like, still have faith in God. And like, my brain cannot reconcile that.
Mhm.
My brain cannot reconcile, kind of like you said, having a parent who traumatized me and then blamed me for the trauma.
Mhm.
Like, that is how I see God. And it's really hard for me to have, and I don't know if I need to. But part of me thinks there's something wrong with me because I cannot picture God any other way. Like
Mhm.
I have no desire, you said I don't want to worship a God like that. I mean, that's me. But there is a part of me that's just like, man, how do people do that? How do they compartmentalize that? How do they go, yeah, that was my religion that caused me to believe in this God of depravity, you know. And now I don't believe that. And now I see God as all love. And I'm just like, I cannot wrap my I don't know, part of me wishes I could. Part of
Yeah.
me wishes I could, but I can't. I don't beat myself up about that
I'm
anymore.
just glad you don't have to, right?
Right.
The
But it's also like, I don't know, is it like a mental boundary with me? Like part of me is also like, uh
What can I explain
yeah,
something?
go, because I'm
So
just gonna ramble.
That was good. Alice Miller, the book I just finished, it's it's not The Body Keeps the
I
Score,
know
but it
it sounds
sounds a little bit
similar,
like that. It's
but
okay.
it's not.
It's
She
okay.
has her own book.
But she's talking about the commandment to honor your father and mother.
Mm-hmm.
And people are berated with that and forced into forgiving their parents for the wrong they've done and the
Right.
trauma they've caused. And so
Mm-hmm.
you forgive your parents, go back, submit yourself to that. And so the Bible narrative around, well, the Jewish scriptures narrative around that fifth commandment, she calls it the fourth commandment for some reason, but it's
Mm-hmm.
honor your father and mother. So you no, Laura, you got to honor your father and mother.
Oh, I heard that so much.
Yeah, and you need to forgive them,
Mm-hmm.
and let's get on down the road. Well, then we don't deal with the trauma or anything like that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what in you holds on to kind of that idea. Well, I don't want to create a fluffy narrative around God. And
Mm-hmm.
that's me too. When I see people online that maybe have gone a lot more progressive, but they've just changed the narrative of God and invented some language that makes them a little more fluffy and it comes out better in the end. Well, all this bad stuff happened, but now I can say, well, it's just because we misinterpreted God. Well, maybe God doesn't exist is a question you should ask, or maybe God is not anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that God is not even involved in our lives. Did you ask that question? So, um, but if a lot of times pastors, even if they become more progressive, still kind of need that, that power differential and that way of to start an organization, you kind of have to have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you need a leader and a follower and so on. But I think the ways we go about it often diminish people,
Yeah.
and say you can't trust yourself. Just trust me. I got the rules. I'll tell you the rules because I'm speaking to God. And even when they make that more progressive or softer or kinder
Hmm.
or more compassionate, which is good. I want to move in that direction. But even when they do that, they're still hanging on to that idea of God that we need. We need something. And the message of this chapter is kind of, you know what? More than anything we've heard from people out here in the desert who are deconstructing, who are asking good questions, who are really doing research and reading books and finding answers, is they say more than anything, you have to learn to trust yourself.
Hmm.
You have to, I know that you, being a pastor's wife and um, being in the evangelical world for a while, you ignored your intuition a lot of
Oh,
times.
yeah. Well, you're told
You're
to.
forced to almost, yeah.
I
And
mean, if you're a woman in the Southern Baptist denomination, I mean, your kids outrank you unless they're daughters, then they don't. But,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure our son outranked me. Yeah, I'm just saying, he's a
yeah,
guy.
yeah, in the
So,
hierarchy for
yeah, in
sure.
the hierarchy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, as you can tell, I'm still working through some things. But I mean, that's the part I think I cannot just like I can't go like, okay, yeah, I like this softer God. I like this God of love. I like this God of peace and harmony and forget the 50 years of, trauma that this God or the messages about this God, you know. And the fact that, and people can use this for what they want, but the fact that my own earthly father is 100% absent, you know, it's, and here's my thing, like, and I've told people this, if my dad, and let's see, JD's going to be 34. And so he hasn't spoken to me or my sisters in 32 years. And before you jump on me, I have tried to be in contact with them. Even my daughter, who's never met him before she either got married or had her first baby, I think it was before she had Holland, she reached out to him and he never messaged her back.
mhm.
Like it's that kind of stuff.
Rare.
I'm just
You
like,
get an appointment with the pastor.
so, but I'm here to tell you that if he showed up on my doorstep, I would have a conversation with him, but it would be on my terms. And that's kind of how I feel about God. It's like, you know what? You've kind of screwed me over for the last 50 years. I got some questions. I got some real concerns about like who people say you are. And and like I'm also of the mindset that it's like to my earthly father, if you can't handle that, then I guess this is where our relationship ends. And I say the same thing about God. If you can't handle the fact that I'm fucking pissed at you for the shit I've learned about you and for so long how I felt you interacted with me, you can't handle that, then I guess we don't need to have a relationship.
It came a point in my life where I forgave my father. But I want to say that didn't restore the relationship.
Right.
Um,
It has to, a relationship is a dynamic. It
mhm.
can't be a one-way street.
Yeah. And well, I don't want to say that.
Sorry.
But forgiveness by a lot of abuse survivors call forgiveness the F word
Uh-huh.
because they were forced to forgive and even like stay in community
Hmm.
with their abusers. The situation wasn't rectified, the root causes weren't ever found. We didn't ask any more questions. It's just you, as the one that was offended, need to forgive the person that offended you. And so, getting a softer view of Christianity, I think, we need to focus more on mercy, love, compassion, all those things. And so, let's wrap that narrative around God. But wait, why do I need God? He's the one that screwed this thing up. He created us. He created an adversary according to the narrative.
Hmm.
Um, he's the bad father
Right.
in essence, right? I mean,
No, I mean,
he's got an unbelievable temper, right? He kills people that don't agree with him. He, neglects us. You
mhm.
know, we reach out to him, like you said you did to your father, and
And we hear
I
nothing,
don't hear
kind of
anything.
like kind of like God
Then a
for
pastor
longing.
berates me and tells me I'm not
Mhm,
spiritual enough, or
mhm.
I don't
I'm not
come to
saying the right
church
words in my
enough.
prayer.
You know, somebody's got to be accountable for all that.
Hmm.
Denominations and pastors and organizations need to say, well, we've screwed this all up. It's terrible. Maybe we could start over with love your neighbor. Okay, but that doesn't still doesn't mean that I need to forgive someone who hasn't changed,
Hmm.
and for me to
Hmm.
just go right back into community with them. I don't think it's helpful. We can find community anywhere, and sometimes the one or two people, like we went and spent time with your sister and her
Hmm.
husband in Colorado. That's community for me.
Hmm.
That was good community, uh, even though I was working on some stuff over there anyway.
Aren't we always working
Yeah.
on stuff though? So that kind of leads us into the next section, which says the role religion plays. And you started off as religion is an organization. I recognize that it is also a community, albeit one that somewhat resembles a false community, failing to genuinely reflect reality. And this is interesting to me because we maybe maybe it was on our way to or from Colorado, we were talking about this idea of community. And I posed the question to you, when did we decide that church was the end all be all when it comes to community? Because when we and other people that we know started deconstructing and left organized religion, the first question that churchgoers would ask us is, well, where are you going to get your community? And you know what? In those moments at the very beginning, I got sad because I thought, yeah, I don't have any community now. And so when did we decide that church was the definition of community?
Well, I, I've written a lot about that, and I call it a faux community because um, there, I look at some black communities and how what they do with their church and so on. It's like a civil rights headquarters and or a place where the homeless get shoes and things like that. And I think about a little church out on the prairie where all the farmers and people came in and gathered and were together and loved each other and shared their food. And some guy with some religious background came in and told us how to be good, and things like that. Some of that is good community, right? And we've had
Mhm.
a little bit of that in our churches. We were in small towns and so on. So that is community, but it's not the only place
Right.
you can find it. And modern churches especially don't. It's just totally faux community.
Mm-hmm.
It's first of all we have to pretty much agree to believe the same way to come to that community.
Right.
So it's exclusionary. And if you're not that way, then we're going to be anxiously hoping for your change. We're going to try to kind of push you into changing to think like we do because we're right and God is on our side. Then we do some things that produce chemicals in our brains, like we listen to a good speaker,
Hmm.
right? And they're usually talented in speaking. That does something with us. We listen to music that's like going to a concert. It creates chemicals in our brain. And then we're in one way or another shamed, like you mentioned in the very beginning,
Hmm.
told not to trust ourselves, but you can trust me. I've been to God. I went to the altar and I went to the mountain and
Even though we have altar calls and we go to the altar every stinking week, but
yeah,
apparently we're still not good enough.
and
But okay.
I've brought it back for
Sorry.
you, and I've got the word for you, and this is the word. Now
Hmm.
you can have peace. Now, all of that it's a show. It's an orchestration. You're in climate controlled environments. Someone shook your hand on the way in. They were glad to see you. And all the churches we pastored, they love bombed us on the way in.
Oh gosh.
About a year later,
Even a year
the
later.
honeymoon was over, and they had
Even
some
a year
issues.
later.
So it's a faux community. at best,
Yeah, as long as you're doing what we want you to do, we will love you.
yeah.
And the minute that so like, what are some other examples of community? Like, I would consider my workplace a community, part of my community. I would consider our family
Mhm.
part of our community.
Yeah.
Our neighbors are part of our community, and it all looks different. Like, every single one looks different. When you were talking about how we all have to believe the same thing in church if we want to be included, I think about going to work, and like, I definitely think different than a lot of my coworkers. A lot
Mhm.
of my coworkers still go to church. I don't have a problem with that at all. And I do not sit there and try to convince them not to go to church, and vice versa. And we still, like, there's other things that connect us besides,
Connect's a good word because that's what we need, right?
right.
Thinking about what we need from relationships, and we need connection and attachment, right? If
Mhm.
attachment doesn't happen when we're little, right, we
Right.
need more of it. We need connection. We're kind of hardwired for that stuff. But connection can be really simple. One of our neighbors came over and wanted one of my books, and we sit on the porch yesterday and talked
Hmm.
for about a half hour.
Hmm.
Um,
Another
Give
neighbor came over and gave us some
gave us some
sweets.
sweet corn.
Delicious,
That's
by the
right.
way.
And we may agree, we may disagree with
There are
them
some things we disagree with.
politically and so on, but that's community, that's connection. I spoke at the library the other day and
Hmm.
talked about my books, my life, and it was hard, and I cried and stuff, and didn't
You did great.
I didn't do as good
Don't
as
talk down.
I wanted to,
Well,
but
we're our worst critic.
it's connection with people.
And it brought up some great conversation.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe there are some things, like you even said during that presentation, we aren't going to agree on. But then at the end, we had some really good conversation about one of your books, The Hotel, and just it brought up memories for people. And that is a form of connection. And I would say being neighbors with people that don't agree with us politically, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot because, I mean, they have some. I don't know if they still, if they're still Trump supporters or not. I have no idea. But the thing is like, we don't have to agree on that to be civil to one another. And I feel like as soon as like you started bringing up things around social justice issues, especially in our last church, you know, well, we don't agree with you, so we got to get you out of here, kind of thing. It like you said, if you don't believe what we believe, and then we're going to exclude you.
Yeah, so I would say one of the key things, and coming back to our topic, one of the key things about community is your intuition has to be respected.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that everything you think I'm going to implement in my life,
Hmm.
but I need to have some respect for the things that you say. Man, I feel strongly about this. I really think we need to talk about this.
Hmm.
And so it comes back to that, right? Respecting the other person and listening.
Hmm.
And very little listening by most pastors.
Oh, I know. I put that. I was going to read this in that part of the chapter. You said, when was the last time you saw someone interrupt the pastor's message to ask a question or share a concern? When did the worship service last? When did the worship service last get delayed so members could discuss their mental health issues and unresolved trauma? Have you ever noticed a significant amount of funds that religious organizations dedicate to addressing trauma? The answer to that is probably no. How often have you observed religious organizations continuing their usual activities while neglecting instances of abuse within the congregation? And so, yeah, that kind of ties in. Like, no, I mean, I've been guilty of this. How many of us have taken our little kids to church and shh, you got to be quiet. You got to sit here quiet. Sit and listen, sit and listen. right? We are not to interrupt. We are not to, you know, ask questions, raise any concerns, none of that. And we are taught from a very, I mean, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, well, yeah, even as parents, that go to church, we've indoctrinated our children to sit and listen and obey, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, so here's the thing. So, well, my church is better. Here's what I would say. If you, if your experience with organized religion is that, like you just mentioned, one of your chief duties is just to obey. We used to sing that song relentlessly in the
Trust and
Baptist.
obey.
Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but trust and obey. And what that meant was trust and obey the leadership,
Hmm.
right? They could put it off onto God, but they're also saying that they're speaking for God. So we we want you, and you'll be rewarded if you obey, submit. If you experience this sense of shame that we're projecting towards you, you accept that, and when it puts you into a crisis, then you come to us for the resolution. Just
Hmm.
read your Bible, pray, and go to church more, and then just play your part. This is a thing we do every week. We put on this show. We yell at you. We make you feel bad, make you feel afraid. Then we give you a solution. Then we all go out happy. And by Monday, it's wore off, right?
Right.
So, but just play your part, play along, get on the bus, as Mark Driscoll says. Don't worry about the ones that got run over. They weren't committed. They didn't have enough faith. They didn't really love Jesus.
They're
And
probably
that's the
really
really,
saved.
really sad part of it,
Hmm.
right? That we'll just condemn them and talk about them when they leave. And we never intend for the organization to be that way, but it's inherent in organizations uh, to care about the person in charge, um,
To
who,
care about the organization itself.
who has the money, and the organization way more than we care about what the Bible calls the least of these.
Hmm.
And so, um, the number one thing to gain when you think about changing your life is your own autonomy
Hmm.
and your own self-worth and your own internal compass that's been neglected.
Right.
So the first order of business is to find out who you are and then start developing your intuition and trusting yourself and maybe acting out on some of your intuitions, and see how that feels and
Yeah.
see what comes up for you and then work on that.
Right. And
And
that's what I was going to kind of close with. So it's perfect that you said with, because I was going to say, what are some first steps in trusting ourselves? So,
yeah, first of all, you got to realize that you can and that you're
right,
valuable enough to have an opinion and
right.
have some intuition. And you may not be able to parse scriptures or interpret Greek words and things like that, but but if God is real, right?
Hmm.
If there's really a Holy Spirit,
Right.
if all that stuff is true, then it should be. And I remember saying that as a pastor to everyone. You have the Holy Spirit just like I do, but then I believe that.
Right.
But if that's true, then there's something inside you that's not only good, but it has intuition. It has generational trauma, of course, and things like that.
Hmm.
But it also has wisdom that you may not
Right.
have ever tapped into because you were told you shouldn't,
Right.
or you're not the right whatever. Right?
Yeah. I would say learning to trust yourself, definitely baby steps,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It takes some time. I mean, I don't know how long we've been deconstructing. I don't keep a
10,
time.
10 years or
Okay.
so.
I don't
Yeah.
keep a timeline on that, but I mean, the things that were really, really hard for me 10 years ago are not as hard. Do I still struggle with stuff? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think that's part of our human nature. And part of it is that messaging that we heard for 50 plus years, or however long you've been hearing that messaging. So it's going to take some time, have patience with yourself. Start small, right? If you hear that voice of intuition and you feel safe and comfortable following it, then do. If you know it's not going to hurt yourself or someone else, I feel that by doing that I've become more loving, accepting,
And if there's a God that's honorable and just and fair and loving in all those things, that God should honor you as much as someone in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
He should have created us all in his image. I'm
Mm-hmm.
using quotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you are valuable. What you think is important, what you're discovering is worth discovering, and you will learn to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
Once you try on wobbly legs for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having to relearn how to stand in front of people and speak, right?
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but it's worth it. And if God's real, then God should be supporting
Right.
you finding real truth,
Mm-hmm.
real understanding, and your voice matters, as we say all the time now.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this was a good, I mean, I feel like all the chapters are good in it. And I really like that we're talking about each one because it's kind of helping me work through some stuff, you know?
Good.
Like I said, I'm kind of a lifelong learner, so I don't think I'm ever going to arrive. Don't think I'm ever going to stop, you know, questioning, if you want to call it questioning, if you want to call it deconstructing, whatever you want to call it. But I'm okay with that. Like
Mhm.
I'm totally like, because I love to learn and grow. I plan on continuing to do that until my last breath.
Yeah, probably the biggest struggle for us, just to go ahead and close it down, is um, that you have great intuition, but we've been so conditioned that I'm the leader and I'm supposed to have the answers, and sometimes you defer to me when you already have the right insight, and I make it more difficult. Anyway, we don't know how
You
deep
don't
we
know.
want to go into that right now. But I have learned to trust your intuition, and hopefully I'm getting better. And for the listeners out there, we encourage you to buy the book, or let us know if you can't afford the book. We'll help you get it. There's several cheap ways to get it, like if you do an ebook or the audio book.
Yeah, I got it for free and I didn't even have a
Yeah,
credit.
the audio book is pretty good. We did it through AI for the first time, and
It's really good.
it sounds really good and much better than me.
Yep.
But
No, I said yep too soon. Anyway, it's called Campfires in the Desert, a deconstruction travel guide. You can find that on Amazon or.
we encourage you, as always, to be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.